Bridgerton has given us unforgettable romances, dazzling Regency-era drama, and the beloved Bridgerton family at its core. But as Season 4 approaches, one burning question refuses to fade. Will Daphne and the Duke of Hastings finally return? Their sudden disappearance left fans scratching their heads, and the longer the silence continues, the harder it is to ignore. When Bridgerton first arrived on Netflix in December 2020, it quickly became a cultural phenomenon, and at the heart of it all was Daphne Bridgerton, played by Phoebe Denver. Daphne wasn't just one of the 8 siblings, she was the face of the entire show. Her journey into London's marriage market, her struggles to balance love and duty, and her eventual romance with Simon Basset, the Duke of Hastings, set the tone for everything that followed. What made Daphne's story so compelling was the way it captured the heart of Regency society, while also feeling modern and relatable. She was introduced as the perfect debutante, beautiful, graceful, and trained to embody everything a young lady of her status should be. But beneath the polished exterior, Daphne was determined to find not just a suitable match but a real, passionate love. That pursuit resonated with audiences who weren't simply watching a period drama, they were watching a young woman trying to carve out her own path in a world that often gave her very little agency. And then came Simon, the Duke of Hastings, played by Regé Page, was equally captivating. Their romance had all the ingredients of a classic love story, a convenient arrangement that blossoms into something real, fiery chemistry that electrified every scene, and conflicts rooted in secrets and vulnerability. The push and pull between Daphne and Simon gave Season 1 its emotional core. Their steamy romance not only made headlines but also set Bridgerton apart from other period dramas, drawing in viewers who might never have considered watching one before. It's easy to forget now, but in the early days of Bridgerton, Daphne and Simon weren't just characters in a show, they were the show. Their faces dominated the posters. Their love scenes were the ones everyone was talking about online. And their storyline was the engine that carried the series into global stardom. Daphne embodied the Bridgerton name, establishing the family as the emotional center of the series. Without her, the dazzling costumes, ballrooms, and scandals would have lacked a beating heart. But as soon as Daphne and Simon's story reached its conclusion at the end of Season 1, things began to shift. Bridgerton's anthology-style format meant that each new season would focus on a different sibling. And with that transition, Daphne's spotlight dimmed. In Season 2, she made brief appearances, most notably offering advice to her older brother, Anthony, as he pursued his own love story with Kate Sharma. Those moments were meaningful, reminding audiences of her role as a supportive sister, but they were fleeting. By the time Season 3 rolled around, Daphne was absent altogether, and her presence or lack thereof became impossible to ignore. The abrupt change felt jarring because of how central she had once been. Audiences had invested deeply in her story, only to see her vanish without explanation. For a character who was introduced as the essence of Bridgerton, the one who embodied the show's values of love, family, and devotion, her disappearance left an unmistakable gap. Season 1 had made Daphne indispensable, yet the seasons that followed treated her as though she no longer mattered. And that dissonance is what continues to frustrate fans to this day. One of the most puzzling aspects of Bridgerton in its later seasons has been the complete silence surrounding Daphne Bridgerton's absence. Viewers expect shifts in focus between siblings, it's part of the show's DNA. But what they don't expect is for one of the most important characters in the family to seemingly vanish without a trace. And that is exactly what has happened with Daphne. What makes this absence even more frustrating is that it isn't limited to small gatherings or minor background moments. Daphne has been absent from the kinds of events where her presence would feel essential. Family milestones like Colin's wedding and Francesca's wedding. These aren't casual dinners or garden parties. These are once-in-a-lifetime occasions that any devoted sibling would naturally attend. To see Daphne missing from them, with no acknowledgement from the family or the writers, creates a jarring disconnect between what we know about her character and how she's being portrayed in the narrative now. The omission is particularly strange because Bridgerton is usually so meticulous when it comes to family dynamics. The show thrives on intimacy, siblings sharing advice, mothers guiding daughters, brothers teasing one another. Every interaction reminds us that this isn't just a romance series, it's a family saga. And Daphne, as the eldest Bridgerton daughter and the leading lady of Season 1, should be central to that dynamic, even if her personal love story has concluded. By ignoring her, the show isn't just writing out a character, it's cutting away part of the family fabric that made it so appealing in the first place. What stings for fans is that it wouldn't have been hard to provide even a simple explanation. A single line of dialogue could have solved the problem. A comment from Violet about Daphne traveling abroad with Simon, or Eloise joking that her sister is too busy managing a household full of children, would have given viewers something to hold on to. It wouldn't have needed to be elaborate, just a small acknowledgement that she still exists in the family's world. Instead, the complete silence makes it feel as though she has been erased. That silence is loud in a show like Bridgerton. The series has always emphasized how close-knit the Bridgerton family is, how they show up for each other's biggest moments. So when Daphne fails to appear, or isn't even mentioned during weddings, scandals, or turning points, it doesn't just feel odd, it undermines the very foundation of the family bond the show is built upon. Audiences are left to fill in the gaps themselves, but the more seasons that pass, the harder it becomes to justify why she's absent. This lack of explanation has also fueled endless speculation among fans. Some wonder whether Phoebe de Never chose to step away permanently, while others believe the writers simply didn't know how to integrate her now that her romance arc was finished. Whatever the real reason, the result is the same. Daphne's silence has created a glaring hole in the narrative, and as long as the show continues to sidestep the issue, that hole will only grow more noticeable. As Bridgerton moves into season 4, the absence of Daphne becomes harder and harder to ignore. Earlier seasons could brush it off by focusing heavily on other siblings, but the deeper we get into the series, the more implausible it feels for Daphne, the eldest daughter and the once leading lady of the entire show, to be missing from the narrative. And season 4, with its spotlight on Benedict Bridgerton, is exactly the kind of story where her presence should matter most. Season 4 is set to center on Benedict's romantic journey, finally elevating him to the lead role after seasons of playing the charming, artistic second brother. Fans have been eagerly awaiting his turn in the spotlight, and with that comes another major milestone for the Bridgerton family, a wedding. Weddings are at the heart of Bridgerton. They are more than just ceremonies, they are pivotal family events that bring every sibling, friend, and relative together. Daphne, as a devoted sister, would logically be expected to show up for such an occasion. If she doesn't, her absence will be impossible to explain away without damaging the show's credibility. The issue becomes even more glaring when you compare her to other married siblings. Take Anthony and Kate, for example. Their love story was beautifully wrapped up in season 2, but that didn't mean their characters disappeared. They continued to have meaningful screen time in season 3, and now they're confirmed to return in season 4 as well. Their presence reinforces the idea that marriage doesn't end a sibling's role in the family, it simply evolves it. They attend events, offer advice, and remain integral to the Bridgerton household. If Anthony and Kate are still involved, why wouldn't Daphne and Simon be? This inconsistency draws attention to a growing problem. Bridgerton was always pitched as a family saga, not just a series of romances. Each sibling's story builds on the others, with the married ones often stepping into mentoring roles. Daphne herself played that part briefly in season 2, when she guided Anthony through his own emotional journey. That kind of support is part of what makes the show feel so layered and interconnected. Removing Daphne strips away a key voice, and with Benedict's story about to unfold, the absence of her influence will feel like a missed opportunity. There's also the matter of audience expectations. Fans who fell in love with season 1's central couple Daphne and Simon haven't forgotten them. Even if their personal arc has ended, viewers naturally expect them to remain part of the family's lives. Seeing Anthony and Kate continue to show up reinforces that expectation. Every time they return, it highlights the fact that Daphne doesn't. And with Benedict's wedding on the horizon, the absence of the Season 4 is a turning point. If Daphne is missing once again, the show risks undermining its own family-centered identity. Viewers want to believe in the closeness of the Bridgertons, and that belief becomes harder to sustain if one of the most important siblings is consistently invisible during the biggest family milestones. Season 4 can either address this problem head-on, or deepen the silence that has already gone on too long at its core. Bridgerton isn't just a romance series, it's a family saga. The appeal lies not only in watching the siblings fall in love, but also in seeing how their stories intertwine, how their relationships with one another shape their choices, and how the Bridgerton household operates as a close-knit unit. Every sibling, whether married or unmarried, contributes something unique to the overall dynamic. And yet, the absence of Daphne has begun to chip away at that foundation, leaving viewers with a version of the family that feels incomplete. From the very beginning, the series emphasized the strength of the Bridgerton bond. We saw it in the siblings' playful banter, their occasional rivalries, and the way they came together when it really mattered. It's this sense of togetherness that made the audience invest in their love stories in the first place. When Daphne fell for Simon in season 1, her siblings were deeply involved in the drama. Anthony's protective instincts, Eloise's curiosity, Colin's teasing, all of these reactions reinforced the idea that no Bridgerton makes decisions in isolation. Their romances are family affairs. That's why Daphne's ongoing absence feels so disruptive. By season 2, she had transitioned into the role of a married sibling who could offer wisdom and perspective. She appeared at key moments to advise Anthony as he navigated his romance with Kate, reminding viewers that her journey didn't end with marriage, it simply evolved into something new. That tradition of guidance is important because it shows continuity across seasons. The family grows, but the married siblings remain present as anchors. Without Daphne, however, that pattern starts to break down. Other siblings, like Anthony and Kate, or Colin and Penelope, may still step into those supportive roles. But there is something distinctly missing when Daphne isn't part of the mix. As the eldest daughter and the one who once carried the narrative weight of the entire show, her absence leaves a gap that cannot be filled by others. She represents a female perspective that balances the brothers' advice and adds emotional depth to the family dynamic. Removing her voice reduces the richness of the guidance the younger Bridgertons receive. This void is especially noticeable as Benedict prepares to take center stage in season 4. His story will need the grounding influence of his siblings. And while Anthony, Colin, and even Kate can offer insights, the lack of Daphne's presence risks creating an imbalance. Audiences know from the books that Daphne is supposed to remain an important part of her siblings' lives, and the decision to exclude her undermines the authenticity of the family narrative. The danger here is bigger than just one character. If Daphne continues to be ignored, it sets a precedent. Other siblings who complete their love stories could be quietly dropped too, eroding the very identity of Bridgerton. What makes the show stand out is that it doesn't just tell isolated romances. It tells a collective story about love within the framework of a family. If that family bond is weakened, the series risks losing what makes it so special. When we talk about Daphne and Simon's disappearance from Bridgerton, it's impossible not to consider the actors behind the characters. After all, while the storylines are written by the show's creative team, the willingness of performers to return plays a huge role in shaping who appears on screen. For Phoebe Dynevor and Jean Page, the paths they've chosen since season 1 shed light on why the Duke and Duchess of Hastings have been missing, while also leaving open the possibility of a future return. Phoebe Dynevor, who brought Daphne to life with grace and charm, has been candid in interviews about her feelings regarding the character's journey. She has said that Daphne's story ran its course after season 1, suggesting that her romantic arc had reached a natural conclusion. From her perspective, Daphne had achieved her goals, finding love, marriage, and eventually motherhood. Once those boxes were ticked, there was less urgency to continue centering her on screen. Still, Dynevor hasn't slammed the door shut. On multiple occasions, she has expressed openness to reprising the role if the storyline called for it. That's a critical distinction. She's not uninterested, but she's waiting for the right narrative reason. This flexibility gives the show's writers an opportunity. If they craft a storyline that naturally involves Daphne, whether it's supporting her siblings, facing challenges in her own marriage, or even guiding the next generation, Dynevor seems willing to return. The challenge is that the longer the show ignores Daphne, the more awkward her reappearance becomes. A brief absence could have been explained with ease, but after missing multiple seasons, bringing her back without it feeling forced will require careful storytelling. Jean Page, on the other hand, has been a more complicated case. His breakout performance as Simon Basset turned him into an international star almost overnight, and Hollywood quickly came calling. In the years since Bridgerton, Page has focused heavily on film projects, from The Grey Man to Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. His schedule, coupled with his career trajectory, suggests he may not be eager to step back into the role of the Duke, especially in a supporting capacity. That said, Page has never entirely ruled it out. While he has downplayed rumors of a comeback and often emphasizes that his time on Bridgerton was meant to be a one-season arc, he has also spoken warmly of the show and its impact. Importantly, he hasn't shut the door completely. This means that, under the right circumstances, a compelling script, a significant event in the family, or perhaps even a one-off cameo, his return isn't impossible. Ultimately, the decision rests with the creative team. Both Dynevor and Page have left the window cracked open, but time is working against them. The longer the show avoids addressing Daphne and Simon, the harder it becomes to reintroduce them in a way that feels authentic. Audiences can suspend disbelief for a season or two, But if the Duke and Duchess remain absent indefinitely, any sudden reappearance risks feeling contrived. In other words, Bridgerton is running out of time to solve its Daphne and Simon problem. The actors may be willing, but it's up to the writers to seize the opportunity before it slips away for good. One of the biggest reasons Bridgerton became a global sensation was its ability to balance sweeping romance with the warm, chaotic, and deeply human dynamics of a large family. Each sibling's story was compelling not only because of their individual journeys but because of how those journeys rippled outward, affecting brothers, sisters, and parents alike. The Bridgerton household felt real, alive, and above all, interconnected. But with Daphne missing, and the possibility of more actors reducing their roles in the future, that delicate balance is at risk. By the time season 4 arrives, Daphne's continued absence won't just feel like a minor omission, it will feel actively untrue to her character. Daphne was written in season 1 as a devoted daughter and sister who prioritized family above all else. She was present at the most important events in her siblings' lives, offering guidance, teasing banter, or simply her unconditional support. To now suggest, through silence, that she no longer shows up for milestones, like weddings or births, creates a version of Daphne that contradicts everything the audience once knew about her. Fans notice these inconsistencies. And when characters behave in ways that don't align with their established traits, the integrity of the storytelling begins to crumble. The danger goes beyond Daphne herself. If Bridgerton establishes a precedent where siblings simply vanish after their love stories are resolved, it could unravel the very structure that has made the show unique. Imagine future seasons without Anthony and Kate attending major family gatherings, or Colin and Penelope disappearing once their story concludes. Each missing piece chips away at the family picture until what remains is no longer the sprawling ensemble drama viewers fell in love with, but a fragmented collection of disconnected romances. This concern isn't theoretical, let's ground it in reality. Jonathan Bailey, who plays Anthony, has seen his career soar since joining Bridgerton, with major roles in both film and theater. At some point, he may decide that making brief appearances in later seasons isn't worth the commitment. The same could be said for Simone, Ashley, Kate, Nicola Coughlan, Penelope, or Luke Newton Colin, whose profiles are also rising. If these actors step back without careful planning from the creative team, Bridgerton could face a domino effect of absences that leave the family dynamic hollowed out. That's why reintegrating Daphne, or at the very least acknowledging her absence, is so critical. She represents more than just a single character. She's a symbol of how the show treats its married siblings after their stories are told. If Daphne is gracefully woven back into the narrative, even in small but meaningful ways, it reassures viewers that the Bridgertons remain a united. In short, the stakes are high. Bridgerton can't thrive as merely a string of love stories, it needs the glue of family to hold everything together. And right now, that glue is showing cracks. Without action, the show risks alienating its loyal fan base and undermining the very heart that made it so beloved. When it comes to Daphne and Simon, fans aren't asking for the impossible. They don't expect Bridgerton to shift its focus back to season 1's central couple or devote entire storylines to their married life. What audiences want is far simpler: closure, acknowledgement, and a sense that Daphne remains an active part of her siblings' lives. The absence of these small but important touches has created what many now call the Daphne problem, a gap in the series that grows more glaring with every season. For fans, the frustration isn't rooted in greed for more screen time, it's about consistency. Daphne was written as a loving, loyal sister who played a pivotal role in shaping her family's future. To now pretend she has disappeared without explanation feels jarringly out of character. Even just a handful of scenes, a letter being read aloud, a quick visit during a key event, or a conversation where another sibling updates the family on her life would be enough to reassure audiences that she is still part of the Bridgerton world. Small moments of acknowledgement go a long way in ensemble dramas, especially those built on family bonds. Closure is another piece of the puzzle. When Reed Shumpage exited the series after season 1, fans were disappointed but understood that Simon's arc had largely been completed. The issue is that his departure, paired with Daphne's diminishing role, left their story feeling unfinished. We never saw how their marriage settled into daily life, how they balanced personal desires with family duties, or how they integrated into the wider Bridgerton circle. While viewers don't need every detail spelled out, they do want reassurance that the Duke and Duchess of Hastings are still thriving, still connected, and still present in meaningful ways. The timing couldn't be better for the show to address this in season 4, with Benedict finally taking center stage. The Bridgertons are preparing for another pivotal romance and, presumably, another wedding. Weddings in Bridgerton are more than romantic milestones, they are family spectacles. Filled with emotion, humor, and the sense of unity that defines the show. It's hard to imagine Daphne, the eldest Bridgerton daughter, being absent from such a monumental moment. Her presence would not only add emotional weight but also provide narrative balance. She could step into the role of advisor, gently nudging Benedict toward love as she once nudged Anthony. And what about Simon? While Reggie Page's return is less certain, even a brief cameo or a passing reference would thrill fans. His inclusion doesn't need to overshadow Benedict's story. In fact, it could serve as a reminder that past romances continue to shape the present, reinforcing the idea that love stories don't end with marriage, they evolve. That at the heart of it. What fans really want is to feel that the Bridgerton family is whole again. They want to see siblings supporting each other, married couples staying connected, and a continuity that honors the characters they fell in love with from the start. Bringing Daphne and, ideally Simon, back into the fold, even in a limited way, would restore that sense of completeness and silence the lingering questions once and for all. So, will Bridgerton Season 4 finally bring back Daphne and Simon? Or will the silence continue? That's the question that has lingered ever since the Duke and Duchess of Hastings vanished from the series. With Benedict's story set to take center stage, fans are once again holding their breath, wondering if this might be the moment the writers finally acknowledge the characters who started it all. The longer Bridgerton avoids addressing Daphne and Simon, the harder it becomes to justify their absence. In Season 1, their love story wasn't just another plotline, it was the foundation of the entire series. Daphne's journey from hopeful debutante to Duchess of Hastings set the tone for the drama, romance, and emotional stakes that drew millions of viewers in. Simon, with his brooding intensity and unforgettable chemistry with Daphne, quickly became a household name. To simply erase them from the narrative without so much as an explanation risks damaging the very heart of the show. The sense of a strong, united, and evolving family. Audiences are patient, but patience has limits. By the time Season 4 premieres, Daphne will have missed not one but several major family milestones, including Colin's and Francesca's weddings. If she fails to appear at Benedict's as well, it will stretch the boundaries of believability. Viewers know the Bridgertons are fiercely close-knit, and Daphne has always been portrayed as deeply devoted to her siblings. To suggest she would willingly miss these moments feels inconsistent with the character the writers worked so hard to build in the first place. What's more, the absence doesn't just affect Daphne, it ripples across the entire ensemble. The Bridgertons work best when they are together, offering advice, clashing in playful banter, and supporting one another in love and heartbreak. When a sibling is missing, the family bond feels incomplete. The silence around Daphne and Simon isn't just a gap in cats and it's a gap in the emotional rhythm of the show. There's still hope though. Phoebe Dynevor has expressed openness to returning if the storyline demands it. And even though Region Page has seemed less eager, the door has never been completely closed. Their return doesn't need to dominate screen time or overshadow Benedict's arc. Even a few well-placed scenes, or a thoughtful explanation woven into dialogue, would go a long way toward restoring balance and satisfying audiences. Ultimately, Bridgerton thrives on continuity. Every season may shift the romantic spotlight, but the family's presence has always been its backbone. Neglecting Daphne and Simon undermines that backbone. If the creative team wants to protect the series' legacy, they'll need to make a choice. Either reintegrate the Duke and Duchess into the family tapestry, or, at the very least, offer closure that honors their importance. Because in the end, Bridgerton isn't just about ballroom scandals and swoon-worthy romances. It's about family, their triumphs, struggles, and unbreakable ties. Ignoring Daphne and Simon weakens that story. Addressing them, however,